Hi, my name is Gentle Blythe. I'm a Deputy Superintendent for Communications at San Francisco Unified School District. And we wanted to answer some questions that people have about quarantine and modified quarantine. We're joined here today by Chief Lau-Smith, who oversees our Student Family Services Division, and by Deputy Superintendent Enikia Morthel, who oversees instruction in San Francisco Unified. Thank you both for being here. My first question is for you, Chief Lau-Smith. What happens when we learn that a student or staff member has tested positive for COVID?
So when we learn that, we have the district and each school has a COVID-19 health and safety plan, which is based on San Francisco Department of Public Health's guidelines for schools. These guidelines describe the protocols to follow when someone at school is exposed to COVID-19. That means they are a close contact, has symptoms of COVID-19 and or test positive for COVID-19. If a child or staff member tests positive for COVID-19 or has symptoms, they must stay home. In addition, the school will be responsible for identifying, notifying, and sending home all close contacts who are not fully vaccinated. If necessary, the areas where the student or staff spent significant time will be cleaned and disinfected. For more information about these protocols, please visit our website, sfusd.edu, under this section called When Someone Gets Sick. If a person is a close contact and has been fully vaccinated or has tested positive for COVID in the past 3 months, they do not need to quarantine. For those who do have to quarantine, the standard quarantine of 10 days can be shortened to 8 days with a negative COVID test on day 6. In addition, SFUSD staff meet with the health department's school response team daily, which provides an opportunity to review each case individually and provide detailed recommendations. The health department will also reach out to the family of a student who tests positive to offer additional resources if needed.
Thank you. And so if my child goes out on quarantine, either because they have COVID or because they are identified as a close contact, Deputy Superintendent Ford Morthel, what kinds of options do they have to continue with their schoolwork?
Yes, thank you, Gentle. So first, when a student is put on quarantine, the family should reach out to their school and request independent study. An independent study is a contract between the home and the school that makes sure that learning continues during the time away and that attendance is not negatively impacted. To get to your question, during quarantine, students are provided with asynchronous or independent learning activities from their classroom teacher. And this will include both digital and non-digital assignments. In most cases, these assignments will be pushed out via common platforms like Seesaw for our younger learners, Google Classroom, or other platforms that are familiar to the student. In addition, SFUSD has provided grade level and content-specific applications, lessons, and activities on its webpage that families can use to extend and or enhance the work during their quarantine period. SFUSD students also have access to a host of learning applications and resources in their SFUSD digital backpack. We've created guidance for school sites to really reduce the variance in experience and work for students during the quarantine period.
Thank you. Chief Lau-Smith, what is modified quarantine?
That's a great question. While modified quarantine is allowed, it is not required, and currently the district is not implementing modified quarantine. However, the San Francisco Department of Public Health guidelines do allow for students who are not fully vaccinated to participate in modified quarantine under very specific conditions where we can safely identify that both the student and the infected person were wearing face masks consistently and correctly during the close contact period. And then again, if we do identify students who are eligible for modified quarantine, the California Department of Public Health identifies very specific conditions for that modified quarantine, which includes that the student must continue to wear a mask at school, they must stay home if they have symptoms, and they cannot participate in any other activities except school, including sports and other community activities that aren't also school activities.
Can you explain why SFUSD isn't using modified quarantine at this time?
As we have always said in the district, safety is our priority. And if we cannot implement modified quarantine with fidelity, we do run the risk of having even more students exposed to COVID. And we don't currently have the resources to create the operational systems to ensure that we can identify with confidence the students who in the last 48 hours of an exposure date, that both that student and the infected person were wearing face face masks consistently and correctly. We also don't have a system to track students on modified quarantine to ensure that they are testing twice weekly and that the results are reported to the San Francisco Department of Public Health. Or do we have the resources to provide testing at 119 school sites on a twice weekly basis to ensure that all students have access to testing? We do understand the impacts to students and families, but until we have the resources to operationalize the system for modified quarantine with safety and consistently, we will continue to implement the standard quarantine of 10 days, which can be shortened to 8 days with a negative COVID test on day 6.
Thank you, both of you, for helping us to understand quarantining and what our options are at this time for families and students. Thank you. Have a great day.